What's going on, YouTube? The weekend is just about here. Why don't you celebrate by liking this video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already? Tap that little bell so you get notified every time we go live. We're previewing week 21 and talking about Alex Bregman, who is just absolutely on fire, up next on Kokomo Friday.
Alcantara, Soroka, you look so good in Boca. Peralta, Manoa, bounce back for Aaron Giolito, Castillo, Yoshida, Mosu, Tacano, and Fado. Value so high, but ADP so low. Frank Clubs, tip some kind of Joe. Now let's get on with the show.
Happy Kokomo Friday and welcome in to Fantasy Baseball today on August 19th. Frank Stampfl joined by the Scotty Dubs, Scott White. Today on the show, we will talk about Alex Bregman. The man is on fire. He's coming for you, Scotty, after what you had to say about him.
But sure feels that way. Feels personal.
We will also talk about what to do with struggling pitchers. The White Sox starter on the other side of that game. What is wrong with Lucas Giolito? I do not know. We've got week 21 sleepers, 2-star pitchers, and much more. But let's jump in.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
All right, Scott. You do have a very interesting player here listed for oh my goodness gracious, but I think we need to start with Alex Bregman and this Astros game because it was a massacre. They put up 21 runs on 25 hits against the Chicago White Sox, and of course led by Alex Bregman, who had one of the games of the season, right? For any hitter, 4 for 6, a double dong, 2 doubles, 6 RBI, 4 runs scored, and his first steal. Just a little cherry on top for Alex Bregman in this game. 23.5 fantasy points on CBS, which is normally what a pretty damn good pitcher would put up in a single start. It's just
this is and this would be a whole week for a hitter, like a good week for a hitter.
Massive game here for Alex Bregman. Post All-Star break now, he is batting .343 with 7 homers, 12 doubles, 26 RBI in 27 games, nearly an RBI per game during this stretch. And we talked about him the other day, Scott. I looked into the underlying numbers. It's not like he's hitting the ball all that much harder. It was kind of tough to figure out what has changed for Alex Bregman, but of course the plate discipline remains fantastic and he's hot. So I don't really know what else to say other than that, but depending on how he closes out the season here, if he remains this hot, that will give us more confidence in drafting him next year.
Yeah, it will. And I was poking around on the Astros site, trying to find some sort of insight into what's changed for Alex Bregman. And I found a pretty interesting quote here in the write-up for the game. So I'll just give the whole quote. It's pretty long. I know everybody always says 2018, referring to the year where he hit 31 home runs, or 2019, referring to the year where he hit 41. But I think each year is different, and definitely I'm trying to get back to the mechanics I had those 2 years. The previous 2, I believe he's referring to 2020 and 2021 here. Mechanically, I wasn't the same. My front tip was wide open, and it was making me spin and cut the baseball instead of stay through it and be able to drive it. We've been working hard this year, and a lot of people have helped me out working in the cage. It's been good the last few months of being more consistent. So he makes reference to some pretty specific mechanical issues and what's resulting from those issues. And, he's a guy who's gotten by on suspect exit velocities in the past. And I've blamed his drop off on the new baseball, which doesn't carry as well. And maybe he doesn't quite impact the ball well enough to be a real power hitter if that's the case. But, if it's more about, as he seems to be alluding to here, if it's more about sort of the trajectory the ball takes off the bat, that might explain it. We have talked about how, okay, one way that a guy without premium exit velocities can still be a good source of power in this environment is to pull the ball a lot. And it kind of seems like, it's a little more specific what he's talking about, but it kind of seems like it's in that same realm. So I may have been a little too quick to have Alex Bregman as one of my fallers in my latest Dynasty stock watch. I say too quick, but I gave him almost 2 years to get back on track, right? So I don't know. I don't know what I don't know, right? But this is something I do know now, and it's causing me to rethink my stance on a player who I was always very loyal to as a fantasy analyst before I wrote that in the Dynasty Stock Watch.
I don't think that you should be too hard on yourself about this one, Scott. I mean, the way that Bregman had played the past couple of seasons, and even the first half of this season, he was batting .238 with I think it's 764 OPS in the first half of the season, which is, just about as replaceable as you can get as a hitter in both real life purposes and fantasy purposes. So I think that you were right to kind of devalue him for dynasty purposes, but to that point, he's changed things and he's turned it around.
Yeah, and to clarify, I'm not ready to swing all the way back the other way just yet either. It's just he's clearly giving us more to think about, and as you said a minute ago, the next 6 weeks are going to be interesting in terms of how we evaluate him for 2023.
Mm-hmm. Last point on Bregman. While you were reading that quote, it just got me thinking about he was dealing with a lot of injuries the past couple of years too. So I think that's something that could definitely affect mechanics, and maybe you're overcompensating for something, or you just feel out of whack, right?
Sure.
It was, there was a bunch of different stuff that he was dealing with. So I think that could definitely be a reasonable explanation, but whatever the case, he looks healthy right now. Alex Bregman is absolutely on fire. Kyle Tucker within that same game went 4 for 6 with 2 runs scored and 3 RBI. The last one I wanted to bring up here, Scott, Chas McCormick, who went 3 for 6 with his 12th homer. He added 5 RBI. Does this game matter at all? Obviously, it's one singular game, but he has started 4 of the last 6 games for the Astros. He's 3% rostered. Probably more of like a deep league ad, but does this matter at all?
Yeah, he might have some fringe relevance in 5 outfielder 15-team leagues. He's not somebody most fantasy players need to concern themselves with, I'd say, for no other reason because he's not quite an everyday player. But he's in a good lineup. He's not a total zero for power. Gets on base or at least walks at a decent clip. I don't know about gets on base because he doesn't hit for much average. But yeah, Chas McCormick is not a complete nobody in fantasy.
All right. So in deeper leagues, just a name to pay attention to there. We will get to Lucas Giolito in just a little bit, who was the starter in this game, where he was tagged for 7 earned runs, but that's just part of the bigger picture where Giolito has struggled for a large majority of the season. Oh my goodness gracious for you, Scotty. Who do you have?
All right. I got Michael Massey. Mass Effect here. He had his first major league home run. It wasn't like a monster dong or anything. 386-foot shot. Kind of hooked it around the right field foul pole, as left-handed hitters are wont to do. But still, he's on the board with a home run. And he also singled in the game, 2 for 4 performance, raising the batting average to 321. He was batting leadoff for the Royals. These are all positive things. But you look under the hood, and I think it's even more positive. This may have been Massey's first home run, but I'm not sure how he only has one, because his average exit velocity, even coming into this game, Michael Massey's average exit velocity was 92.1 miles per hour. He was striking out at only a 16.1% rate. Who does that remind you of, those two numbers?
Vinny P, baby.
It's almost identical to his other left-handed hitting rookie teammate there in Kansas City. So, I mean, Michael Massey's minor league numbers are pretty impressive as well. He doesn't walk like Vinny Pasquantino does. That's I think is a clear distinction between the two, but he can steal some bases potentially. He plays a weaker position, second base, And I think it's possible he's about to go off here too and emerge as an instrumental player in fantasy. Only 18% rostered is Michael Massey. I'm not saying he deserves to be rostered on the level of like a Vaughn Grissom, but Vaughn Grissom is like 75% rostered now as opposed to Massey's 18%. So if you've already missed out on Grissom and you want help up the middle or at second base specifically, I think Michael Massey you need to look into.
Yeah, I think at least doubling that roster percentage makes sense. Obviously, any deeper leagues, I picked him up in some of my 15 teamers using him as a middle infielder right now. But even if you play in a 12-team roto league with a middle infield slot, I could see some team in that league needing help and using Michael Massey there.
And just in case you didn't hear us talk about him when he first got called up, to give you the specifics on the minor league numbers, Michael Massey between double and triple A this year hit 312 with 16 homers, 13 steals. That's an 87 game. So, almost double that for a 162 game base. 16 homers, 13 steals, and 903 OPS. So he was killing it down there. He was in the minors last year too, but that was in high A. He was 23 at the time. I think that's why he didn't get much prospect height, because he was kind of old for that level. We weren't sure how it was going to translate to the upper levels. Well, it did. And now it looks like it might be translating to the majors as well.
Okay. With Michael Massey, Scott, you mentioned how hard he hits the ball. He puts the ball in the air, not an absurd amount or anything, 42%. I mean, that's fine, but that's also led to a 16% barrel rate so far for him, which I get it's a small sample size, but for a middle infielder, that's a really, really good number. So
how does he only have one home run? It doesn't, between the exit velocity, the launch angle, how the low strikeout rate, like it seems strange. He's put the ball on the ground like 33% of the time. That's if your line drive rate and fly ball rate are both that high, that you can have a ground ball rate that low, that's a really good sign.
That was my very next point, Scotty.
Yeah.
The Royals, Kauffman Stadium, over the past 3 years, 3-year rolling average, according to StatCast Park Factors, they are the third worst ballpark for home runs in all of baseball. So, I think eventually things kind of even out. You don't play all your games in Kauffman, obviously, and we've already started to see Vinny Pasquantino come around, but it wouldn't surprise me if, even though these guys have really good StatCast numbers, maybe the power is a little bit suppressed because of the ballpark that they play in. So
yeah, that could be. And I think it's probably more of a concern for Massey than for Pasquantino, but to some degree, both. I mean, we did see Mike Moustakas be a consistent power source there, so it's certainly possible.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get back into that Astros game, and now we could talk about Lucas Giolito, who was crushed. He gave up 7 runs on 8 hits over 3 innings pitched, the third time he has allowed 7 or more runs in a start this season. And Giolito has just 1 quality start in his last 7 outings. The season-long numbers now 5.34 ERA, 1.53 whip, still over a strikeout per inning, but the walks are troublesome, 3.4 walks per 9, career high 366 BABIP. His home runs per 9 are 1.47. That is higher than 2018, when he had the highest ERA among all qualified starting pitchers in Major League Baseball. So it's just a flurry of everything going wrong right now, Scott. And, we were getting questions here on Thursday whether or not people could drop Giolito, and I still want to believe that he's going to get back on track, if not this year, maybe next year. But I mean, with the season kind of winding down here, he's still 96% rostered. I don't know that needs to be the case.
I don't know that it does either. Here's the tricky thing, and how often has this happened? We get to a point with a highly regarded pitcher who people drafted high, and we're to the point where it's like, we can't really stick with this guy, can we? And then, of course, the very next week, he lines up for 2 favorable matchups at Baltimore versus Arizona for Giolito next week. I think at least in points leagues, you got to consider using him still. You can take a little more damage in a points league, and volume is a higher priority in a points league for pitchers, as we often point out. So that's where I'm going to start with this. As for how confident I am in Giolito getting back on track this year, we're kind of entering late August now, and Giolito over his past 15 starts has a 6.64 ERA.
Oof.
So I see, particularly with the strikeout rate, with the swinging strike rate, I see ability there still, but there are like his velocity is down about a mile per hour on the fastball from a year ago. The spin rate is down a couple hundred RPM from a year ago. Like there are warning signs in the skill indicators themselves that I think have me concerned about Giolito from a long-term perspective, as well as just, is he going to figure it out this year?
Mm-hmm.
So
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's always hard to know what to make of a player like this. I think we're late enough in the season that anything goes. And like, if you don't, if you just feel like a roster spot is better served on, a streamer type than hoping it suddenly clicks for Giolito, I get that. But we've seen how quickly for play, like we know from the past 3 years, Giolito has a ton of talent, and we know it can be like flipping a switch often for pitchers who are struggling. I mean, it's happened to Charlie Morton each of the last 2 years. He's just righted himself all of a sudden. And so it could happen with Giolito too, given his history.
Mm-hmm.
But I get it if you want to drop him.
Yeah, same thing happened with Luis Castillo last year too. The first 2 months he was absolutely brutal, and really since then he's been one of the more reliable starting pitchers. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen for Giolito, but just saying it could happen. So I think if he's the worst player on your team, the worst pitcher on your team, you absolutely cannot stand putting him in your lineup. You could probably drop him, but to Scott's point, if you play in a points league, 2 good matchups next week in any type of categories league, I cannot see doing it. Just there's no chance.
Yeah.
Fortune favors the brave is coming a little bit later on. Lucas Giolito is probably the face of that segment at this point in the season. There was one other offensive outburst here on Thursday. The Cardinals put up 13 runs on 15 hits. Paul Goldschmidt just keeps getting it done. 3 for 4 with 2 doubles and 2 RBI. But I think the biggest takeaway here, Scott, is Lars Nootbaar, who, correct me if I'm wrong, did you have him as a sleeper hitter this week?
I did.
You did? Well, kudos to you, because he had a massive game. He went 2 for 3 with 2
kudos
walks.
From Lars Nootbaar.
Nice. I did want to say before with Michael Massey, I mean, there's so many opportunities for nicknames. Obviously, Metallica fan, the first one that comes to mind is Massey of Puppets, which doesn't really make sense, but kind of makes sense in my mind. So I don't know. I might run with that. But if anyone has anything better, let us know. Lars Nootbaar, massive game here. 2 for 3 with 2 walks, his 6th home run, 2 RBI, 3 runs scored. Looks like he's, leading off against right-handed pitching now quite consistently for the Cardinals. 13% rostered. He's got 8 games this upcoming week, Scott. And over his last 20 games, Nootbaar is hitting 300, 2 homers, 13 runs, 2 steals, more walks and strikeouts, hitting the ball hard. I don't think he's a must-add, but he needs to be more rostered than 13%.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously the full season numbers still look pretty bad because he was providing virtually nothing for so long. But he is clicking now and playing every single day. He's not sitting against lefties. He's walking basically as much as he's struck out. I'm looking at the last 28 games here leading out of Thursday, 16 walks versus 17 strikeouts. 934 OPS during that stretch. And Lars Nootbaar is only 24 years old. And you look at his minor league track record. Well, I guess he doesn't have much of a minor league track record. But not much of a minor league track record. He was good at AAA last year, I guess is what I was warming up to. Small sample because he spent so much time in the majors, but he hit 308 with a 900 OPS at AAA last year.
All right. So I think, again, in any 5 outfielder leagues, you need help right now. Lars Nootbaar, absolutely someone you should look at. And Albert Pujols, I don't think we're looking to add him in fantasy, Scott, but it's pretty fun to see him in a Cardinals uniform in his final season doing what he's doing. 2 for 3, hit his 11th home run of the season, had 5 RBI in this game, and now has 4 homers over his last 6 games. So,
and 690 homers for his career.
that is awesome. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it seems like he's going to fall just short of 700, which sucks. But I mean, either way, it's an amazing career. It's, probably the best hitter I've seen growing up, like in my teenage into adult life, has been Albert Pujols. So,
Yeah. I mean, first, basically right up to the time he went to the Angels. So his Cardinals career, which spanned 11 seasons, Albert Pujols slashed 328, 421, 617, a total of 445 home runs, won 3 MVP awards, Rookie of the Year, was 4 times MVP runner up. Like he was, it's easy to forget, like he was, the premier hitter of his generation, because it's been another 11 years since then. He kind of got ruined by all the infield shifting, I think, in part. I mean, in part, he just was getting older, but like he was early on in his time with the Angels. I know he was the most shifted upon right-handed hitter, and famously said, he's not going to change his approach because of shifts. And I think that kind of contributed to a premature decline for him, namely in the batting average category. I mean, he was still hitting home runs early with the Angels, but yeah, he's one of the all-time greats, even if the second half of his career was kind of a dud by comparison.
Mm-hmm. Trip down memory lane. Good old Albert Pujols. Let's take a look at a few other starting pitchers who are struggling-ish. What do we do with this group? And we'll start with Andrew Heaney, who went 4 2/3. He gave up 5 runs at the Brewers. 3 of those were earned. He had 10 strikeouts of the 14 outs that he recorded in this game, 3 homers allowed. The numbers are still really good, Scott. The problem is that he has not completed 5 innings in any of his 5 starts since returning. So Heaney's still 82% rostered. He goes up against the Brewers again next week. I don't know. Like, does Heaney need to be that rostered? Are we starting him next week? I don't feel great about it.
Yeah, I mean, if he were to start going 6 innings all of a sudden, the numbers would probably be pretty good. And obviously, being on the Dodgers, that's a good thing for any pitcher because of all the run support they're going to get. So it's, I don't think he needs to be started next week. It's just, you continue to devote a roster spot to him. Well, Heaney or Giolito, who would you be more inclined to hold on to? I think I'd say Heaney.
Neither.
Well, I mean, it's never a bad idea to have upside on your bench. There's definitely upside here for Heaney.
Yeah.
But there's also the issue of how long are the Dodgers going to stick with the 6-man rotation, because now they have Dustin May coming back this weekend, who would be the odd man out if they cut down to 5. Presumably, well, you know what? I think Heaney's fine even now because they have Ryan Pepio in the rotation. I guess it'd be more of an issue when Clayton Kershaw returns. So yeah, that's not a concern just yet, but it could eventually become one.
It might be a format question. Like, maybe I would go with Giolito in a points league because I expect him to go deeper into his starts. But with Heaney, I mean, the ratios and the strikeouts are there. He's just not going very deep. So
yeah,
they're kind of opposite in that way right now. Frankie Montas has allowed 6 earned runs twice this season. Both have come with the Yankees. So he was up against the Blue Jays here on Thursday. 6 innings, 6 runs allowed, only 2 strikeouts, only 6 swinging strikes. I don't want to prematurely just blame this on the shoulder injury, Scott. Velocity looks fine. His average exit velocity against in the start was very low, 82.8 miles per hour. But in 5 starts since returning from that shoulder injury, Frankie Montas has a 6.55 ERA. The walks are way up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you start him next week against the Mets? And it's a pretty tough matchup.
Yeah, probably don't. I think it's noteworthy that in this start, Frankie Montas threw only 14 splitters. And I think that we've seen his splitter usage fluctuate pretty dramatically over the years. When it's on, it's clearly his best pitch and the best stretches of that span of his career have been when he throws it a lot. I think he just may not have the feel for it right now. And so, when he uses it more, it doesn't necessarily go well. When he uses it less, it doesn't necessarily go well because the rest of his arsenal isn't quite on the same level. And that's kind of the story with Frankie Montas and what makes him frustrating. So I wouldn't be interested in dropping him right now, but I wouldn't be interested in starting him right now either.
Luis Garcia of the Astros is quietly struggling recently as well. He was at the White Sox, 5 innings, 3 runs allowed. He also allowed 11 base runners in this start. Over his last 8 starts, he has a 4.98 ERA, exactly a strikeout per inning. The ERA estimators still like him during this time. Scott, what do you think about Luis Garcia? Would you still start him next week against the Minnesota Twins?
I'd weigh my options.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be afraid to start him, but I wouldn't necessarily expect a good start from him either.
Yeah, I don't think he's a must-start pitcher. He's like a fringe top 50 starting pitcher, which, again, I think that's kind of what he is right now, especially since he's struggling. Kind of more of a matchups play. Minnesota, kind of hit or miss. So I agree. Kind of let's see who your other options are. Don't think he's a must-start. Some waiver wire pitchers, not a great day for waiver wire pitchers, but a few semi-interesting names. That's what we'll go with. Luis Patino returned to the Rays rotation. He had a strong start against the Royals, 5 2/3 shutout with 4 strikeouts and 16 swinging strikes in that start. Dane Dunning now has a quality start in 3 of his last 4 outings. He was up against the Oakland A's, 6 innings, 2 runs, 4 strikeouts for him. Adrian Sampson hasn't been great recently, but he was at the Orioles where he went 5 2/3 shutout with 6 strikeouts there. JT Brubaker, a dominant start, gets back on track against the Red Sox. He went 7 shutout, only 2 hits allowed, 7 strikeouts to 0 walks. And Max Castillo, who is also known as Maximo Castillo on the CBS website, he came over in the Whit Merrifield trade, and he was making his Royals debut at the Rays, 5 innings, 1 run, 3 strikeouts. He's got 5 different names here, all kind of varying degrees of roster percentage and talent level. Does anyone stand out from this group? Luis Patino, Dane Dunning, Adrian Sampson, JT Brubaker, Max Castillo.
I mean, JT Brubaker remains low-key interesting because the overall swinging strike rate is good, and the slider especially seems to be a good pitch for him. It kind of reminds me of Kyle Gibson that, even in spite of that, the results just aren't consistent enough, and strikeouts aren't consistent enough. And in Brubaker's case, he pitches for a bad team. So I think that's going to keep him in the streaming category. In terms of potential upside here, I mean, Patino clearly stands out. Former high-end pitching prospect. You like seeing 16 swinging strikes in his return, 6 on the fastball, 4 on the slider, 5 on the changeup. So he had a few different pitches working. It's encouraging. I don't know that it makes a must-add, but certainly makes a must-monitor. And I kind of like Max Castillo, too. Minor league numbers were pretty good. Too many walks, but gets ground balls at a nice rate. He kind of had a similar breakdown with the swinging strikes, 10 on 69 pitches. So that's a good rate. 3 on the fastball, 4 on the changeup, 3 on the slider. So he's not coming up with just one pitch, the way so many young guys do. One good pitch, one pitch capable of getting whiffs. He doesn't, none of those 3 pitches is like a standout either. They're all kind of middling, but he seems to just have a feel for pitching and sequencing, and seems like the sort of prospect who performs beyond his physical tools. And sometimes those guys turn into great fantasy assets. So I'd keep an eye on Max or Maximo Castillo.
Okay. I mean, definitely 2 names there with Patino and Castillo just to check out in dynasty leagues or keeper leagues if they're available, and kind of stash them for the rest of the season. Let's see how it goes. And then maybe have some upside going into next year as well. I already checked one of my 15-team leagues, and Luis Patino is available there. So I think especially in deeper formats, like Patino is someone who might be able to help us here down the stretch. Some waiver wire hitters. Andrew McCutchen went 2 for 4 with a double dong, 3 runs, 3 RBI. And remember, Scotty had that awesome June OPS over 900 in that month. Since the start of July, I noticed the batting average has been down. And, overall, the OPS is down during that time. Like, it's not impressive, but the numbers actually still look pretty good, right? So 253 batting average, 6 homers, 3 steals. Counting stats look good. He's hitting in the middle of the Brewers lineup. He's hitting the ball hard, 91.4 mile per hour average exit velocity, 61% rostered. Like, maybe it should be a little bit higher. What do you think about Andrew McCutchen?
It's probably about right.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe a little higher, but I think we don't talk about streamables often with hitters. I feel like that's kind of him.
Okay. In deeper leagues, an outfielder, Jake McCarthy, I know I mentioned him recently. He does have some speed. He's been playing quite regularly for the Diamondbacks, and maybe it looks like he sits out like maybe once every 4th or 5th game. He went 3 for 5 with a run and an RBI, and over his last 10 games, he's batting .394 with 3 steals. He's 14% rostered. Any interest, Scott, in those deeper 5 outfielder leagues, Jake McCarthy?
No, not a ton of interest. I think even though he has performed pretty well of late, there's a chance he gets surpassed here. If not by one guy, the next guy we're talking about, then maybe by another guy, an even higher profile guy. The first guy I'm talking about is Stone Garrett. The next guy I'm talking about is Corbin Carroll, if it wasn't clear.
Yeah.
Because Stone Garrett here. So Stone Garrett actually got the start at DH here on Thursday. And that's been a bit of a revolving door for the Diamondbacks. So I guess there's room for him and McCarthy both. But Stone Garrett looks like the more interesting of the two to me. And he's a right-handed hitter, so it wasn't clear, maybe he's going to platoon with McCarthy. But, was in the lineup here, second game in a row, this time against a good righty, Logan Webb. And Stone Garrett had another good game, 2 for 5 with a double and a stolen base. He is now, between his 2 games, Stone Garrett is 4 for 8 with 3 doubles, a stolen base, and only 2 strikeouts. All 4 of his batted balls in Thursday's game were hard hit, meaning 95 miles per hour and up, and 3 of them were 100 and up. So he's making high quality contact. We're talking a sample of 2, but for a guy who had a good season at AAA and, obviously has opportunities with the Diamondbacks. So I could see him becoming useful.
And how can you not root for a guy named Stone Garrett? I mean, come on. That is an amazing name. And if there was
I think he was out of baseball, going off memory here. I wrote about him early this year in the prospect report. I think he was working like as a real estate agent for a year. He was previously in the Marlins organization, and then the Diamondbacks signed him. So it's kind of an interesting backstory there for Stone Garrett.
Yeah, so I'm seeing an article from the New York Post. Diamondbacks Stone Garrett revived baseball career with a LinkedIn message. So I don't know. There's definitely a bigger story there. It's cool. I mean, I'm rooting for the guy. I want to see him get on track here. He's a little bit older. He's 26 years old, but again, like the guy, if there was ever a player's name that like matched their body, this guy is like chiseled. He's jacked up. I don't know. I like him. I'm rooting for the guy. So he's 2% rostered. He's widely available in those deeper 5 outfielder leagues. Obviously, NL only. Yes, I say take a shot there.
But now both he and McCarthy are going to be looking over their shoulder because the other guy brought up Corbin Carroll. Like, there was another article out here on Thursday. Nick Picoro of the Arizona Republic. He's covered the Diamondbacks for a long time, and it again suggests that Corbin Carroll will be getting the call at some point soon here. I mean, he outright writes that in the article. Diamondbacks general manager Mike Hazen suggested that Carroll's big league debut will occur at some point before the end of the season. Let's see if I can find a direct quote. No, but I mean that was the whole tenor of the article, and I think because we talked about this a little yesterday, Frank, before this article came out, and you were saying, oh, what would be the incentive? The Diamondbacks are out of the race. Why wouldn't they play the service time game with Corbin Carroll? And I think what we could be seeing, I don't know this for sure, what we could be seeing is the effect of the new incentives with the new CBA, where high-end prospects, after they get called up the first several years of their career, if they finish, they place, if they get a full season, their first season, and then they place top, I don't know exactly the measures, but something like top 3 in Rookie of the Year, and then a couple years after that, top 3 in MVP. There's a whole breakdown of ways teams can earn draft picks, extra draft picks for their prospects being up all year and then placing in awards soon after that. And that may be enough incentive for some GMs, maybe even all GMs. Like they may see the possibility of more draft picks as more rewarding than the possibility of extra control, which I don't know if I agree with that. I'm not running an MLB team or anything. I think I'd prefer the extra control to the draft picks, but maybe it is enough of incentive for them. And if that's the case, you're going to set your prospects up better for winning award if you give them a little exposure the year before.
That's true.
So, yeah, I think we could see. It sounds like we will see Carroll. Like they're not even hedging that much. The people who cover the Diamondbacks, but I think there's a good chance we see like Gunnar Henderson too.
Yeah,
September could become a popular call-up month for prospects because of these new incentives.
That's a really good point. Yeah. And one that I hadn't thought of, but I do think it makes sense. Call Corbin Carroll up, get his feet wet a little bit. And then, probably I would imagine going into next year, he is the favorite for the National League Rookie of the Year, just based on how he's dominated the minor league so far. So we shall see. Look, all in all, again, like Corbin Carroll's cool, but he's not Stone Garrett. So let's come on.
Okay. Well, here's a direct quote from Hazen. I want to put him in a position to actually win those awards. I feel like coming up here and playing well when he does come up here is going to set him up to actually go win those awards next year. I mean,
it doesn't get more direct than that, right?
Yeah.
He's literally telling us what they want to do. So,
yeah.
All right. Look, if you haven't picked up Corbin Carroll and stashed him already, like this is someone who we talked about Vaughn Grissom as a league winner on yesterday's podcast. Corbin Carroll can absolutely be a league winner if he gets called up within the next couple of weeks. There's no doubt about that. Last question on Stone Garrett, Scott. I feel like we talked about him so much already. 2% rostered. Someone asked me on Twitter, Stone Garrett or Kerry Carpenter as a dynasty league flyer.
I got to say Carpenter. I mean, Stone Garrett is such an atypical prospect, being older at 26, having been out of the game. I think he's kind of a lottery ticket play for the Diamondbacks and could wash out of the majors very quickly. I think Kerry Carpenter is going to get more of a chance to really settle in.
All right. Before we hit the break, reminder, Fantasy Baseball Today has helped you all season dominate your league, but now you can represent your favorite podcast with official Fantasy Baseball Today gear only found on the CBS Sports Store. Discover t-shirts, mugs, sweatpants, laser engraved pint glasses, hats, water bottles, and more to remind your buddies how you got the inside scoop to crush the competition. Right now, FBT listeners will get 20% off orders when they use this podcast exclusive code Fantasy Baseball 20 during checkout. That's Fantasy Baseball 20, and it's only available to our listeners. I am not going to read the link because it's very long, but you can find it in the podcast and YouTube description. If you want to hear about more prospects this weekend, listen to our Saturday episode of Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. It's our 5-minute podcast. You can download and follow wherever you listen to this podcast. Let's take a break. We'll be back right after this. The news and notes. There was not much going on here on Thursday, so let's zoom by, and then we'll get to week 21. Luis Robert was out again on Thursday, but did go through a full workout. Depending on how his wrist responds, he could be back this weekend. Or I guess he can go on the IL. It's not really clear. Wander Franco has sat out 2 straight since leaving Tuesday's game due to wrist soreness. He's attempting to return from a hamate injury, which is not great. Tyler Malley's shoulder MRI came back clean, and he remains day to day. DJ LeMahieu returned to the lineup on Thursday. He was batting leadoff, and interestingly, he was playing second base. They could have easily DH'd him, but I guess if he was healthy enough to play second base, that seems like a good sign to me. Jack Flaherty will make his next rehab start on Sunday at AA. The Mets are optimistic that Taijuan Walker could make his next scheduled start on Sunday against the Phillies. Charlie Blackmon left Thursday's game early due to a hamstring tweak. Mike Soroka is making his next rehab start Sunday at AAA. He was superb in his first outing, striking out 8 over 4 scoreless innings. If you do have an available IL spot, definitely look to add Mike Soroka right now. Brandon Marsh was placed in the IL with a left knee bruise retroactive to August 17th. And one other prospect update, Rangers third base prospect Josh Young is absolutely crushing it right now, Scott. He's batting .323 with 8 home runs in 15 games between rookie ball and AAA. 7 of those games have come at AAA, where, frankly, I think he's hit the majority of those home runs. So it's not like he was just doing it at rookie ball. He's now doing it at AAA.
Well, and he did it at AAA last year. His slash line there was ridiculous. He was looked like he was in line to be the opening day third baseman for the Rangers before he suffered that torn labrum in his non-throwing shoulder. It's worth pointing out, in his not dominant shoulder when he's hitting. So yeah, I think he'll be up in September too. I would say Corbin Carroll and Josh Young, spelled Jung, are the top 2 prospects to stash right now, even over Miguel Vargas at this point.
Little sneak peek to our FBT and 5 episode this weekend. Scott, did you know that I actually have a partially torn labrum in my right shoulder?
I did not, Frank. I haven't seen your medical records.
Yeah, I'll send them over right after the podcast.
I think we need to review that contract you signed with CBS.
Well, I'm going to blame that for the reason why I lost to Ariel Cohen in tennis on Thursday. I mentioned earlier on in the week that we were going to play. We always choose these disgustingly hot days. I don't know why. It was like 90 degrees out. I throw the ball up in the air to serve, and it like goes right into the sun. I can't see it. Of course, I'm making a bunch of excuses, but yeah, I did lose to Ariel in straight sets. So he's clearly better than me at this point. I think if nothing else, that's what we figured out. So shout out to Ariel. Great fantasy baseball player, great tennis player. Let's talk about week 21, and we will start with the schedule next week, which is quite spread out. We have 5 teams with 5 games: the Diamondbacks, the Tigers, the Pirates, the Giants, and the Nationals. We have 16 teams with 6 games, 7 teams with 7 games, and 2 teams with 8 games. Those are the Cubs and the Cardinals. Starter sit these fringy 2-start pitchers for next week. And first up, we have Noah Syndergaard. He's up against the Reds and the Pirates. Good matchups.
Yeah, and it's another light week for 2-start pitchers. There are, so many teams with playing only 5 games this week. So I have a list of 26 names in the 2-start pitcher rankings, which is not many. So Syndergaard is actually the 6th highest ranked 2-start pitcher for me, which seems high for him. But you mentioned good matchups and, not great options. So I think most people are going to lean yes on that.
All right. Next up, we have Eric Lauer at the Dodgers and versus the Cubs.
Yeah, that's less than must start like Syndergaard, but still probably advisable given lack of options. I wish the first matchup wasn't against the Dodgers, of course, but Lauer's been pretty effective.
We spoke about Giolito, good matchups at the Orioles versus the Diamondbacks. He has been putrid though, and you said points league only, right, for that?
Yep.
All right, next up we have
By the way, my only 3, just to further drive home the point, my only 3 must-start 2-start pitchers for this week are Max Scherzer, duh, Robbie Ray, duh, and I put Adam Wainwright in there too. He had a good start Thursday. One of his 2 matchups against the Braves, but, it's had a good season.
Scott, is there a reason why you have Jordan Montgomery so low on this list? He's at the Cubs and at home against the Braves. He's pitched really well.
He's in the same category as he's in the second highest category. So I have him behind Jeffrey Springs, Nick Lodolo, Michael Kopech, Syndergaard. One of his matchups is against the Braves, so that's part of it.
True.
But I think most everybody who has Jordan Montgomery is going to want to start him for those 2.
I think so too. A couple of other names here. We have Zach Plesac at the Padres and at the Mariners.
Yeah, lean no on him.
Last one, Domingo Germán with the Jekyll and Hyde matchups, the Mets and at the Oakland A's.
Yeah, that's a no for me.
That's a no for Scott. Dog. 2-star pitchers to add and stream for next week. Who do you have there?
Edward Cabrera is a pretty easy choice. We talked about how awesome he looks. He has a higher ground ball rate than Sandy Alcantara. He has a swinging strike rate on par with Garrett Cole. He has 4 pitches with a 30% whiff rate or better. And now he gets 2 matchups. Opposite ends of the spectrum, Oakland and Dodgers, but still, gotta go with Edward Cabrera this week. Nick Lodolo, also 2 matchups on opposite ends of the spectrum, Philadelphia and Washington, but coming off a good start. I think it was against Philadelphia also, right?
Yes.
And did well against them. So, like Lodolo stuff, like that curveball, I'd roll him out there. Jeffrey Springs gets the Angels, great matchup. Red Sox, middling matchup. But, the ratios are always pretty good for Springs, and getting 2 starts this week will help with the volume. And then much lower than those 3, I have Ross Stripling, Angels, and Red Sox. The same matchups as Montgomery, actually, or the same matchups as Springs, actually, but flipped. And, he took a no-hitter into the 7th inning as last start, has an ERA below 3 for the year. Don't entirely trust it, but 2-start week, pretty good matchups. I can at least recommend Ross Stripling for points leagues.
All right. That brings us to one of our favorites, Scotty. Fortune favors the Brave, 2-star pitcher of the week, which means you should not play this pitcher. But if you are desperate and you need starts and you need volume, then you might not have a choice. Obviously, Lucas Giolito is the face of this segment, Scott. But I do have one other one. Rowanzi Contreras. As much pedigree as he has, and as great as he looked last year in the minors, even in the minors this year, he gives up a lot of loud contact, and he walks a lot of batters. And he's got 2 tough matchups next week, the Braves and the Phillies. No, don't do it. But also, if you're feeling brave, then you could do it.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of cheat here since it is such a short list of 2-start pitchers. I actually do have Austin Voth as my 10th sleeper pitcher for this week. So he's a little higher than I like him a little more than I normally like. Fortune favors the Brave picks. Austin Voth has polarized matchups, White Sox and Astros, so that's annoying. But over his past 7 appearances, 6 of them starts, he has a 2.27 ERA, right, just under a K per inning. And I believe the Orioles, no, they're only at home for the first half of the week, but that's a good environment for Voth, a guy who gives up fly balls, and he's been succeeding on the road during that stretch too. So I think he's, if you're dead set on maximizing volume, I think you can look into Austin Voth.
Let's wrap up on the pitching side of things. Single start streamers for next week. Who do you have here?
I have Cole Irvin at home, which is always good for him, against Miami, the worst team for left-handed pitchers. So really like Cole Irvin for this week. Jesus Luzardo is at Oakland. I wonder if those 2 are head-to-head.
Revenge game. I love it.
True for Luzardo, yeah. And obviously Oakland's a good matchup, so he's pretty easy call. George Kirby gets the Nationals. Kyle Gibson gets the Pirates. And that's about it.
All right. Well, let's talk about some hitters. The best hitter matchups for next week are the White Sox, the Rays, the Astros, the Phillies, and the Rangers. The worst hitter matchups, the Dodgers, the Guardians, Nationals, Diamondbacks, and Tigers. With that being said, your sleeper hitters for next week. I wonder who's number 1 on this list.
I know. It's Vinny P. It's Vinny P. And number 2 is Vaughn Grissom. Neither one of them, their matchups aren't horrible, but they're normally I'd focus on players with better matchups than these 2 have this upcoming week. But, if the threshold is these are my favorite hitters rostered in less than 80% of leagues to start this week, I mean, it really would be Pasquantino or Grissom apart from the matchups. I hope I hope this is the last week I have to include them here because they finally get over that 80% threshold. But continue to stick with them. You mentioned the Rangers as my 5th favorite matchups this week. Gotta like Nate Lowe. I gotta like Leody Taveras. He continues to he keeps it going. He missed a little time with injury there, but he's come back hot, and they both of them have 2 games at Coors Field this week, which further bolsters their case. The Mets were not among my teams with the 5 best matchups, but they have pretty good matchups nonetheless. And only one of their 6 games is against the lefties. So I think that makes Brett Beatty a pretty easy call for his first full week in the majors. And by the way, he hit another ball more than 100 miles per hour off the lefty in Thursday's game. So that continues to be impressive for him, Brett Beatty. Okay, so kind of going off the beaten path here, I have Derek Hall of the Phillies, who only plays against lefties, but as of now, the Phillies are, he only plays against righties.
Right.
But as of now, the Phillies are scheduled to face 6 in their 7 games this upcoming week. And they're all at home, where like Hall has just killed it there. So I think only 20% rostered. We hardly ever talk about him. Derek Hall, good power source. And I think he will be this week. And even more off the beaten path, Jose Siri of the Rays. Remember, formerly of the Astros. I don't think we've talked about him at all since that trade. He's been playing center field every single day for the Rays and providing some stolen bases. Underlying numbers look pretty good, even though the production's been, the actual production's been a bit lacking. The Rays have the 2nd best matchups this week against the Angels, 4 games, at Boston for 3. And given the playing time, particularly if you need stolen bases, Jose Siri, I think, is as true of a sleeper as you're going to find.
So you're saying that I should start him in the Scott White Dynasty League next week?
24-team league, sure.
Yeah, I think so. All right. It looks like in 14 games with the Rays so far, Siri batting .222, but he does have 3 steals, striking out a lot. He's hitting a lot of line drives during that time. So, yeah, he is kind of an interesting player. He was with the Astros as well. That is Jose Siri. And you are correct, Scott. Brett Beatty hit a 104 mile per hour single off of Max Fried here on Thursday. So he's climbing, though. 49% roster. I saw that number. I was like, yes, people are listening. They are in on Brett Beatty. So like to see that. Go out and add him for next week. Let's get into some leftovers from Thursday's action, and we will start with the hitters. Nate Lowe went 1 for 3 with his 17th home run. One of these sleeper hitters, as Scott just mentioned. He's batting .289 overall now on the season. Adolis Garcia went 1 for 4 with his 18th steal, and he currently has a career-high 15-game hitting streak going. So starting to see more consistency out of Adolis Garcia. I mean, to be honest, he's consistently been great this year. Anyway, Wilson Contreras had a double dong. He's now up to 19 home runs, but since the start of July, Scott, 32 games for Wilson Contreras. He is batting .184 during that time with 6 homers and 35 strikeouts in 32 games. His batted ball data hasn't looked so great. He's not hitting the ball as hard during that time. I think it's fair to say the trade rumors probably affected him mentally. He is a human. That's, I think, a very fair excuse for Wilson Contreras, but I saw you moved him down in your rankings a little bit. He's no longer your number 1 ranked catcher.
Yeah, he's not. Will Smith is. Will Smith has had a better season. I think, the skill indicators are even better for him. So, I haven't lost faith in Wilson Contreras or anything. Obviously, every good hitter goes through bad stretches. I don't think you need to bench him or anything. It's the catcher spot. So, you can only expect so much production there to begin with. But yeah, I have Will Smith now as my number 1 catcher rest of season.
Who is this Will Smith that you speak of, Scott?
I don't know.
I only know him as WD Smith, which I got to research this because every time I go to the Dodgers box score now, it's just so weird. Seeing WD Smith, it's just, I don't know. It's just kind of weird for me. So
Okay, I was double checking his jersey number to make sure it wasn't 40, because that would kind of make sense as a nickname then, right? But no,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
16. So
That would be
yeah,
pretty cool.
I don't know. But no, I've only seen the WD and the MLB box scores, so I don't know. I don't think that's an actual thing.
Yeah, we got to see. Brian Reynolds went 3 for 4 with a double dong. He is now up to 20 home runs, and it's been an interesting year for Brian Reynolds. The batting average, not where you want it, 265. I think you were mostly drafting Brian Reynolds for that batting average, but he's been very good in terms of power. He's on pace for a career high in home runs, which last year was 24. He's already at 20. He also has 5 steals. The counting stats are very bad. But Scott, did you see this kind of this rivalry between Brian Reynolds and Red Sox broadcaster Dennis Eckersley?
No, I didn't see that.
So Dennis Eckersley on the air while going through the Pirates lineup just completely rips them. He's just like, what is this? I think he went as far as to say it was like trash or there was nothing, like just completely ripped the Pirates.
Oh yeah, no, I saw. Let me look up the exact quote because it was funny.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
And then it was, I know they asked Brian Reynolds about it. He's like, I couldn't care less about what Dennis Eckersley has to say. And, shout out to Brian Reynolds. He had a good series. He had 3 home runs in 3 games. Ultimately, the Red Sox won 2 of 3. So I guess they get the last laugh, but I don't know. Player versus broadcaster beef.
He called it a hodgepodge of nothingness.
Yeah. That's
The
a little critical, I would say.
yeah.
No,
Eckersley's
he's not really wrong, but
yeah,
it's a little mean.
He's retiring, so that's
Yeah.
he's been pretty fun. But anyway, I will mention for Brian Reynolds, since June 1st, he is hitting 309.
Oh, all right.
So there's your batting average.
I stand corrected. George Springer went 5 for 5 with a double and 2 runs scored. I feel like he just always crushes the Yankees. Vlad Jr. went 1 for 5 with a 3-run homer, his 26th. He now has 3 in his last 4 games. And gosh, I mean, what would he do without Yankee Stadium? That was just a Yankee Stadium special. Gosh, just imagine taking advantage of that all the time. That's just embarrassing. Anyway, pitching standouts part 1 from Thursday. We have Zach Gallen. It is unfair to Zach Gallen that we're just getting to him this late in the podcast, but I don't know. What else are we going to say? He's very good now. He's performing awesome. It's 3 straight starts of at least 7 scoreless innings for Zach Gallen, and he posts a career high 12 strikeouts at the Giants in this one. He had 17 swinging strikes. 10 of those came on the curveball. He's been amazing, Scott. I mean, completely destroyed like our expectations this year. In fact, I think we all had him as a bust, and he's just been amazing. So shout out to Zach Gallen.
Yeah, 3 straight scoreless, 7+, as you said. Combined 9 hits between them.
Whew. Awesome stuff. Yeah, he's been great. Adam Wainwright has now gone 7+ innings in 4 of his last 5 starts. This one was up against the Rockies, 7 shutout with 7 strikeouts there. Jose Barrios gets back on track after 2 very rough starts. He was at the Yankees 6 2/3, 2 runs allowed, 9 strikeouts with 14 swinging strikes. I didn't see anything that changed for Barrios in the start, Scott. Would you play him at the Red Sox next week?
Oh my gosh. It's so frustrating, right? Like, seemed like an obvious sit after 13 earned runs in 7 2/3 innings previous 2 starts. I can't imagine starting Barrios against the Red Sox in a categories league. Even in a points league, like I think I'd sell out for volume before doing that. I don't have enough trust in him yet. I mean, I thought he had earned it with that great July, but then those first 2 starts in August were just dreadful.
Brutal stuff. Pitching standouts part 2. Jacob deGrom was somewhat human. Still turned in a quality start at the Braves. 6 2/3, 3 runs allowed, 9 strikeouts, 20 more swinging strikes, and he has allowed 6 earned runs over his first 4 starts since returning. 37 strikeouts to just 1 walk. Just think about that ratio right now. 37-1. It's absurd. It's just crazy stuff. Max Fried on the other side of this game, strong start in his return from the concussion IL. He went 7 innings, 2 runs, 6 strikeouts there. And then Yu Darvish has now gone 6+ innings in 21 of 23 starts this season. He has not gotten enough credit for the volume that he has provided this year. I would say, obviously, it's Sandy Alcantara. He's head and shoulders above everyone. Aaron Nola is like that pseudo workhorse. But after that, I mean, you're talking about Darvish as one of the main workhorses in fantasy baseball this season.
And worth pointing out,
yes,
bringing the show full circle here, Lucas Giolito now is about in the place Darvish was coming into this year. Like, we don't know if he's got anything left. It was so bad to finish last season. Well, clearly he did. Yeah. Hopefully Giolito can too.
Darvish's final line in this one, 8 1/3, 5 hits, 3 runs, 6 strikeouts. They brought him out for the 9th inning. I think he had less than 90 pitches before that 9th inning. So I get it, but you probably left him out there a little bit too long. And ultimately, the Padres wind up losing that game. The call to the bullpen for the Brewers. Devin Williams struck out the side for his 8th save. For the Braves, Kenley Jansen locked down his 28th. For the Cubs, Brandon Hughes picked up his first save with Rowan Wick unavailable. For the Nationals, the game was tied in the 8th inning. Carl Edwards, once again, pitched the 8th inning. As soon as I pick him up, Scott, they take him out of the closer role. Or I guess they don't have roles there, but whatever. It's annoying.
Yeah.
He pitched against the heart of the lineup, the Padres, 3, 4, and 5, and then the Nats took the lead. Kyle Finnegan walked 2, but picked up his 6th save of the season. Go ahead.
Let me just say real quickly, Brandon Hughes might be a name to remember. He's a left-hander with a 3.03 ERA, 103 WHIP, 11.4 K per 9 for the Cubs. Rowan Wick's done a good enough job there that he's probably just going to keep handling the closer role, but Brandon Hughes is interesting in case something changes.
So Josh Hader is who relieved Darvish in the 9th inning. There was runners on first and second. Hader hit Luke Voit with a pitch. He walked Nelson Cruz. So he walked in the go-ahead run, and then he gave up a sacrifice fly, gave up another hit to C.J. Abrams after that. And then Lane Thomas lined out to end the top of the 9th inning at that point. So Josh Hader, he's looked real shaky for quite some time now, and has not really started off his Padres tenure very well here. For the streamers this weekend, Scott, to stream or not to stream, we'll start with Friday. Aaron Ashby at the Cubs, Keegan Thompson versus the Brewers, Cutter Crawford at the Orioles, Graham Ashcraft at the Pirates, Patrick Sandoval at the Tigers, and Marco Gonzalez at the A's.
Yeah, so as we said yesterday, it's a pretty interesting list. I think in terms of how interested I am in starting them, I'd go Patrick Sandoval 1, Aaron Ashby 2, Graham Ashcraft 3, Marco Gonzalez 4, Cutter Crawford 5.
And don't start Keegan Thompson.
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either. On Saturday, we have Mitch White at the Yankees, David Peterson at the Phillies, Tyler Alexander versus the Angels, Michael Wacha at the Orioles, Justin Dunn at the Pirates. I know he's not very good, but it's the Pirates, right? I feel like I had to throw him on the list. Glenn Otto, Twins, and Chris Archer versus the Rangers.
He's facing that hodgepodge of nothingness.
Jeez.
Come on, man. They called up Oneil Cruz.
Anyway. Yeah, show a little respect.
David Peterson at Philadelphia, and get used to starting him a lot down the stretch.
I agree with that. I think Michael Wacha at the Orioles is okay too. On Sunday, Aaron Savali versus the White Sox, Mitch Keller versus the Reds, Mike Minor at the Pirates. I will throw anyone who is facing the Pirates on this list moving forward. Eduardo Rodriguez versus the Angels in his return. Hopefully, I don't know if that's confirmed. Zach Greinke at the Rays, JP Sears at home against the Mariners, and Dean Kramer versus the Red Sox.
Well, if it is confirmed, I do think Eduardo Rodriguez against the Angels is the best call. He looked great on his minor league rehab assignment. Apparently, the velocity wasn't quite all the way back. So I'm not saying he's must start, but obviously the gentle landing there going against the Angels. And my second choice would probably be Savale against the White Sox, but it's a distant second.
We are going to wrap there. For Scott, I am Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching Fantasy Baseball today. We'll be back again on Monday. Bye-bye.